The cold, metallic walls of Detention Station Real 7 hummed, with the perpetual drone of life support systems, casting harsh blue shadows across the narrow corridors. Jack Morgan, sat motionless in his containment cell, his weathered hands folded calmly in his lap as he studied the alien architecture around him. At 88 years old, the former Earth Navy commander bore the marks of a lifetime spent among the stars, his silver hair catching the artificial light that filtered through the energy barrier, separating him from the corridor beyond. The year was 2475, and humanity had been aware of the Interplanetary Alliance for nearly 3 decades, though their relationship remained complicated at best. Earth's attempts at diplomatic contact had been met with condescension from most member species, who viewed humans as physically weak and strategically insignificant. The Alliance's prisoner intake station, positioned at the edge of real space near the contested border zones, served as a reminder of humanity's precarious position in galactic politics. Jack's capture had been planned down to the smallest detail, though his captors remained blissfully unaware of this fact. His small reconnaissance vessel had been deliberately flown into restricted space, its navigation systems malfunctioning at precisely the right moment to ensure interception by Alliance patrol ships. To the aliens who brought him aboard, he appeared to be nothing more than an elderly human who had wandered too far from home. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the corridor, accompanied by voices speaking in the universal trade language that served as common tongue throughout Alliance space. Jack straightened slightly, preparing himself for what was to come, though his expression remained one of weary resignation. Commander Zorax of the Vixari delegation swept into view, his reptilian features twisted into what passed for amusement among his species. The Vixari were known throughout the Alliance for their aggressive nature and their tendency to view other species through the lens of predator and prey. Standing nearly 8 feet tall with scaled skin that shifted between deep green and bronze depending on the light, Zorax commanded attention wherever he went. His entourage followed close behind, a mixture of species that represented the diversity and hierarchy of the Alliance itself. Well, Zorax hissed, his forked tongue flicking out to taste the air as he approached Jack's cell. What have we caught today? A lost little human, so far from his safe little world. The aliens behind him chuckled, their various forms of laughter creating a discordant symphony in the narrow space. Jack looked up slowly, his pale blue eyes meeting Zorax's yellow gaze without flinching. "Commander," he said simply, his voice carrying the steady authority of someone accustomed to command, despite his current circumstances. "Look at this pathetic creature," Zorax continued, playing to his audience. "So old, so frail. Your species barely lives a century, and here you are, nearly spent. Tell me, Ancient One, what could you possibly know that would be of interest to the Alliance?" The question hung in the air for a moment, and Jack seemed to consider it carefully. When he finally spoke, his words were measured and precise. "You speak of predators, Commander. Your species prides itself on being hunters. Apex predators in your own right." He paused, allowing a slight smile to cross his weathered features. "But you misunderstand the nature of true apex predators." Zorax's crest rose slightly, a sign of irritation among his kind. "And what would a weak, short-lived human know about predators?" "We are apex predators," Jack said quietly, his voice carrying clearly despite its low volume. "Not because we are the strongest or the fastest, but because we are patient, adaptable, and above all, we never hunt alone." The laughter from Zorax's entourage faltered slightly. First Officer Nix, a member of the pale, ethereal Lyrathi species, known for their analytical minds, stepped closer to the energy barrier. Her large, dark eyes studied Jack with newfound interest. "Elaborate," she said, her voice carrying the musical quality typical of her species. Jack shifted in his seat, seemingly struggling with the weight of his years, though those who knew him well would have recognized the calculated nature of the movement. On Earth, we have a saying, "It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog." But even that misses the point. The true apex predator doesn't need to fight at all. It simply waits. Security Chief Krell, a hulking member of the Draxian warrior caste, snorted dismissively. His species valued strength above all else, and the sight of the frail human before them offended his sensibilities. "Enough of this nonsense. The old fool is wasting our time with philosophy. Let me dispose of him and be done with it." "No," Nyx said sharply, her analytical nature overriding the casual brutality that characterized much of Alliance thinking. "Let him speak. I want to understand what he believes he's accomplishing here." Jack nodded appreciatively toward the Lyrithi officer. "Your species is known for its wisdom. First Officer, perhaps you'll understand what the others cannot." He leaned forward slightly, his eyes focusing on each of his captors in turn. "Tell me, how many human prisoners have passed through this station in the past year?" Zorax's crest flattened against his skull, a sign of confusion. "What relevance does that have?" "Humor an old man's curiosity." Nyx accessed her datapad with fluid movements of her elongated fingers. 17 humans have been processed through this facility in the past standard year. All were released after questioning, as per Alliance protocols regarding non-hostile species. 17, Jack repeated thoughtfully. "And where did they go after their release?" "Back to Earth space, presumably," Zorax said impatiently. "What is your point, human?" "My point, Commander, is that you've been thinking like prey animals instead of predators." Jack's smile widened slightly. "You caught them, questioned them, and let them go, never wondering what they might have learned during their time here, never considering what information they might carry back with them." The first alarm began sounding before anyone could respond to Jack's words. Red lights flashed throughout the corridor as automated systems announced a security breach in the station's primary data core. Zorax spun toward the nearest communication panel, his claws clicking against the metal surface as he demanded a status report. Sir, we're showing multiple system intrusions," came the response from the station's command center. "Navigation, communications, and life support backup systems are all showing unauthorized access attempts." Krell's hand moved instinctively to his weapon. "The human must have hidden allies on the station." "No allies aboard the station," Jack said calmly, settling back in his chair as if the chaos around him was merely mildly interesting. "But you're beginning to understand, aren't you, First Officer Nyx?" The Lyrithi woman's large eyes had grown even wider as she processed the implications. "The other prisoners, the 17 humans who were released, they were intelligence operatives." "Not operatives," Jack corrected gently. "Ordinary people who happen to possess certain gifts, enhanced memory, pattern recognition, technical aptitude. Each one spent time aboard Alliance facilities, observing, learning, remembering. Each one carried back detailed information about your security protocols, your technology, your weaknesses." The alarms grew more insistent as additional systems began reporting malfunctions. Zorax's communications with the command center were becoming increasingly frantic as his technical staff struggled to regain control of their own station. "You're sabotaging us from inside your cell?" Krell demanded, raising his weapon. "I'm an 88-year-old man sitting in a containment field," Jack replied reasonably. "I haven't touched anything more complex than this chair." He gestured around the simple cell. "But my people have had nearly a year to study your systems, to identify vulnerabilities, to prepare countermeasures, and they've been very, very patient." Nyx moved closer to the energy barrier, her analytical mind racing through the possibilities. "The intrusions aren't random. They're coordinated, timed to specific system cycles. This level of sophistication would require months of preparation, Jack finished. Years, actually. We've been watching the Alliance for a very long time, learning how you think, how you operate. You see strength in terms of raw power, speed, aggressive dominance. But true strength lies in preparation, patience, and the ability to turn an enemy's assumptions against them. Another alarm joined the cacophony as the station's external sensors detected multiple contacts approaching from Earth space. Zorax's communicator crackled with reports from the sensor operators. Commander, we're reading 47 vessels approaching our position. Configuration matches Earth naval architecture, but they're not responding to our hails. Jack's smile became more pronounced. 47 ships, one for each year of my naval service. They're not responding because they're not here to talk. Commander, they're here to wait. Wait for what? Zorax demanded, his reptilian features contorting with frustration and growing concern. For you to make a choice, Jack said simply. You can continue to view humanity as inferior, as prey animals to be dismissed and ignored. Or you can begin to understand what it means to deal with true apex predators. The station shuddered slightly as its orbital thrusters fired automatically, a safety protocol triggered by the ongoing system failures. Through the small viewport in Jack's cell, the running lights of Earth vessels could be seen arranged in a perfect defensive formation around the Alliance facility. Krell stepped forward, his weapon now fully drawn, and aimed at Jack through the energy barrier. Enough games, old man. Tell your ships to withdraw or I'll— You'll what? Jack interrupted, his voice remaining calm despite the weapon pointed at him. Kill an unarmed prisoner? That would be very unlike the Alliance, wouldn't it? Your own protocols prohibit the execution of non-combatants. We could classify you as a combatant, Zorax said, though his voice lacked conviction. Could you? I haven't taken any hostile action. I haven't threatened anyone. I haven't even left this cell. Jack gestured around the small space. I'm simply an old man who got lost and ended up in the wrong place at the wrong time. The fact that your systems are failing and Earthships have arrived could be entirely coincidental. Nyx's fingers danced across her datapad as she analyzed the situation from multiple angles. The timing is too precise to be coincidental, but proving intentional coordination would require evidence we don't possess. Legally, he's correct. We cannot classify him as a combatant based on inference alone. The station's life support systems flickered momentarily, causing the lights to dim before emergency power restored full illumination. The message was clear. Despite all their advanced technology and military superiority, the Alliance was losing control of their own facility. What do you want? Zorax asked finally, his aggressive posture giving way to the pragmatic realization that he was dealing with something far more complex than a simple border violation. I want to have a conversation, Jack replied. A real conversation, between equals, about humanity's place in the galactic community. Your Alliance has spent 30 years treating us like children who need to be managed, rather than potential partners who might have something valuable to contribute. And if we refuse? Jack shrugged, the gesture seeming to emphasize his apparent frailty. Then, you'll continue to experience technical difficulties until you change your mind. My people are very patient, Commander. We can wait. As if to emphasize his point, the station's gravity generators fluctuated, causing everyone except Jack to stumble slightly. The old human remained seated, his hands still folded calmly in his lap. How long have you been planning this? Nyx asked, her scientific curiosity overriding the immediate crisis. Planning is such a strong word, Jack replied thoughtfully. We've been preparing for opportunities. When I learned about this facility, about its location and function, it seemed like the perfect place to make a point about underestimating humanity. Sometimes the best plans are the ones that adapt to circumstances, rather than trying to force circumstances to adapt to them. Zorax's communicator buzzed with another urgent message from his command staff. Sir, We're losing primary power to sectors 7 through 12. At this rate, we'll be operating on emergency reserves within the hour. And yet, Jack observed, your prisoners' quarters remain fully powered and climate-controlled. Curious how these technical failures seem to avoid causing any actual harm to the people aboard the station. The implications were clear. The mysterious system intrusions were surgical in their precision, designed to cripple the station's operational capacity without endangering lives. It was a demonstration of capability that spoke to careful planning and remarkable restraint. Krell lowered his weapon slightly, though his grip remained tight. What assurance do we have that this will end if we agree to your conversation? The word of an old human who has spent his entire adult life in service to principles of honor and duty. Jack replied simply, I know that may not mean much to species that measure worth in terms of physical prowess, but it's all I can offer. Nix stepped forward, her datapad still active as she continued to monitor the situation. The pattern of system failures suggests intimate knowledge of Alliance technology and protocols. This level of information could only have been gathered through patience and observation, Jack finished. Through sending people who appeared harmless and unthreatening into situations where they could learn. Through understanding that sometimes the best intelligence comes from those who are underestimated and ignored. The lights flickered again, and this time the artificial gravity failed for several seconds before restoring itself. The demonstration was becoming impossible to ignore. Commander, Nix said quietly to Zorax, I recommend we establish communication with Union Central. This situation has escalated beyond our authority level. Zorax's crest rose and fell as he wrestled with the implications of admitting that a single elderly human had effectively neutralized an Alliance military facility. And tell them what? That we've been outwitted by a species we've spent 3 decades dismissing as irrelevant? Tell them the truth, Jack suggested gently. That you've encountered something you weren't prepared for, and that it might be time to reconsider some long-held assumptions. The station's external communications array came online with a burst of static, and suddenly the bridge was filled with the calm, measured voice of a human communications officer. Alliance Station Riel 7, this is Captain Sarah Williams of the Earth vessel Harmony. We are here to ensure the safe return of our citizen, Jackson Morgan. We have no hostile intentions, but we will not leave without him. Zorax moved to the communications panel, his claws clicking against the controls. Earth vessel Harmony, this is Commander Zorax. Your citizen is being held pending investigation of border violations and possible espionage activities. Commander Zorax, came the reply. With respect, our citizen appears to be an elderly man who became lost during a routine navigation exercise. Surely the mighty Alliance doesn't consider such individuals to represent a significant security threat. The subtle mockery in the human captain's tone wasn't lost on anyone present. Zorax's crest flattened against his skull as he struggled with the growing realization that he was being manipulated on multiple levels. Your navigation exercise seems to have been remarkably well coordinated with system failures aboard our station, he replied. I'm sure I don't know what you mean, Commander. Our vessels are maintaining a respectful distance and have taken no hostile actions. We're simply here to collect our citizen and return home. Jack cleared his throat softly, drawing attention back to his cell. Perhaps, Commander, this would be an appropriate time to contact Supreme Counselor Thax at Union Central. I believe he would be very interested in the information I have to share about activities beyond the real border. Zorax turned sharply. What information? The kind that might explain why an elderly human civilian would risk crossing into Alliance space, knowing he would be captured. Jack's expression grew more serious. The kind that might make the Alliance reconsider its policies regarding Earth and its representatives. Nix's datapad chimed softly as she received new information from the station's sensor array. Her large eyes widened as she processed the data. Commander, our long-range sensors are detecting unusual activity in the outer system. Multiple contacts. Non-alliance configuration. Approaching from beyond the border zone. Show me, Zorax demanded, moving to examine her readings. The data was undeniable. A significant force of unknown vessels was moving toward Alliance space. Their energy signatures unlike anything in the database of known species. Their trajectory would bring them directly through the Riel sector within days. This is why I'm here, Jack said quietly. Not to steal your secrets or conduct espionage, but to deliver a warning. Earth's deep space monitoring stations have been tracking these vessels for weeks. They don't respond to communications. They don't match any known designs. And they're heading directly for the heart of Alliance territory. Zorax studied the sensor data, his military training overriding his political prejudices as he assessed the implications. Why didn't Earth contact us through official channels? Because Earth doesn't have official channels with the Alliance, Jack replied. We've been trying to establish formal diplomatic relations for 30 years, and we've been told repeatedly that we're not ready, that we lack the maturity and sophistication required for full membership. So, when we detected a potential threat to Alliance security, we had to find alternative methods of communication. The station shuddered again as another system failure cascaded through the power grid. The message was clear. The technical difficulties would continue until the situation was resolved. Krell stepped forward, his weapon still in hand but no longer aimed directly at Jack. You orchestrated your own capture to force a diplomatic meeting? I volunteered to be the messenger, Jack corrected. The capture was inevitable once I entered restricted space. But yes, this entire situation was designed to demonstrate that humanity has capabilities your Alliance has never bothered to assess properly. Nyx was studying her datapad with intense concentration, cross-referencing the incoming threat with known historical patterns. These energy signatures, they're similar to readings from the Voidbringer incidents 3 centuries ago. But the scale is much larger. The Voidbringers were defeated before my species even achieved interstellar flight, Zorax said. Though his tone had lost much of its earlier confidence, they were eliminated as a threat. Eliminated? Or driven back to regroup and rebuild? Jack asked. Earth's analysis suggests that what you call the Voidbringers may have simply retreated to plan a more comprehensive assault. The vessels we've detected show technological improvements that indicate centuries of development. The implications hung heavy in the air. If Jack was correct, the Alliance faced a threat that could dwarf anything they had encountered in recent memory, and they were learning about it from a species they had consistently dismissed as insignificant. Zorax moved to the station's primary communication console, his claws hesitating over the controls as he wrestled with the decision before him. Contacting Union Central would mean admitting that the situation had escalated beyond his ability to handle. But the alternative was potentially catastrophic. Commander, Nyx said softly, the pattern of system failures has stabilized. They're maintaining pressure without causing critical damage. This level of precision suggests careful study of our technology and remarkable restraint in its application. A demonstration of capability without malicious intent, Jack observed. We could have caused far more serious damage if our goal was destruction rather than communication. The station's intercom crackled to life with another report from the command center. Sir, Earth Vessel Harmony is requesting permission to transmit detailed sensor data about the approaching unknowns. They claim to have more comprehensive readings than our current sensors can provide. Zorax looked at Jack, his yellow eyes reflecting a mixture of frustration and grudging respect. And if I agree to this transmission, then you'll have access to 3 weeks of detailed observations about a potential threat to Alliance security, Jack replied. And you'll begin to understand what Earth can contribute to galactic civilization when treated as a partner rather than a vassal. The decision point had been reached. Zorax could continue to treat the situation as a simple security matter, potentially missing crucial intelligence about an approaching threat, Or he could acknowledge that his fundamental assumptions about humanity might be flawed. "Patch me through to Union Central," he said finally, his voice carrying the weight of the moment. "Priority channel. I need to speak with Supreme Counselor Thax immediately." The next few minutes passed in tense silence as the communication was established. Finally, the deep, resonant voice of the Alliance's highest authority filled the chamber. "Commander Zorax, your request for priority communication has been noted. What situation requires immediate attention?" Zorax straightened, his military bearing asserting itself despite the unusual circumstances. "Supreme Counselor, we have detected a significant unknown force approaching Alliance space from beyond the real border. The intelligence was provided by a human citizen currently in our custody, who claims his species has been monitoring the situation for weeks." "A human citizen," Thax repeated, his tone neutral, but carrying undertones of interest. "Explain the circumstances of this intelligence gathering." The human deliberately entered restricted space, knowing he would be captured. He claims this was necessary because Earth lacks official diplomatic channels with the Alliance. "Sir, I believe this situation requires evaluation at the highest levels." There was a pause as the Supreme Counselor processed this information. When he spoke again, his voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to making decisions that affected entire civilizations. "Commander, I am ordering you to treat the human as a diplomatic representative, rather than a prisoner. Transfer him and all related intelligence to Union Central immediately. And Commander, ensure that he receives appropriate honors during transport." Zorax's crest rose in surprise, but he responded with crisp military efficiency. "Yes, Supreme Counselor, it shall be done." As the communication ended, the station's systems began returning to normal operation. Light stabilized, artificial gravity normalized, and the constant hum of alarms finally fell silent. The message was clear. The demonstration was over. Jack rose slowly from his chair, his movements careful but dignified. "Commander Zorax, First Officer Nix, Security Chief Krell. It has been an illuminating experience. I hope we've established a foundation for better understanding between our peoples." Nix approached the cell's control panel, her fingers moving gracefully over the interface as she deactivated the containment field. "Dr. Morgan, I assume you hold advanced degrees in addition to your military rank." "Several," Jack confirmed with a slight smile. "Though age and experience have taught me that wisdom rarely comes from academic study alone." As the energy barrier dissolved, Krell stepped forward, his weapon now holstered. "I owe you an apology, Doctor. I misjudged both you and your species." "No apology necessary, Chief. Your job is to protect this station and its crew. You were simply doing your duty based on the information available to you." Jack stepped out of the cell, moving with more confidence now that the charade of frailty was no longer necessary. "But perhaps this experience will encourage a more thorough evaluation of potential threats and allies in the future." Zorax approached, his posture respectful rather than antagonistic. "Dr. Morgan, I must ask, how long have your people been planning this approach?" "Planning suggests a fixed objective with predetermined steps," Jack replied thoughtfully. "We've been preparing for opportunities to demonstrate our capabilities and intentions. When the unknown fleet was detected, it became clear that the Alliance needed to be warned, and that this crisis might provide the opening we needed for meaningful dialogue." "The system intrusions," Nix said. "They required intimate knowledge of Alliance technology. How did you acquire such information?" Jack's smile returned, though it was tinged with sadness. 30 years of attempting diplomatic contact. 30 years of being dismissed and ignored. 30 years of watching your ships patrol our borders while refusing to acknowledge our legitimate interests. During all that time, we were learning, studying, preparing, not for war, but for the day when we might finally be taken seriously. The implications were staggering. For 3 decades, while the Alliance had dismissed humanity as insignificant. Earth had been conducting the most comprehensive intelligence operation in galactic history, not through espionage or theft, but through patience, observation, and the careful analysis of every interaction between human and alien representatives. The 17 previous prisoners, Zorax said slowly. They were all part of this effort. Volunteers who were willing to be captured in order to study Alliance procedures and technology from the inside. Jack confirmed. Each one contributed pieces to the larger puzzle. None of them were military personnel or trained spies. They were simply citizens who possessed the skills and courage to help their species earn its rightful place in the galactic community. Nyx was recording everything, her analytical mind already beginning to assess the full scope of human capabilities. The precision of today's system intrusions suggests coordination from outside the station. Your ships were able to penetrate our networks remotely? With help from the inside, Jack admitted. Every system has vulnerabilities, and 30 years of observation provided ample opportunity to identify them. But I want to be clear about something important. At no time were Alliance personnel endangered. Every system failure was carefully calculated to demonstrate capability without causing harm. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the corridor as a security detail arrived to escort Jack to the transport vessel that would carry him to Union Central. But the atmosphere had changed completely from his arrival hours earlier. Instead of a prisoner being transferred for interrogation, he was now a diplomatic representative being accorded appropriate honors. Dr. Morgan, Zorax said formally. On behalf of the Alliance, I apologize for the initial reception you received. Your actions today have demonstrated that humanity possesses both the capability and the restraint required of a mature spacefaring civilization. Thank you, Commander. I hope this is the beginning of a new era of cooperation between our peoples. Jack paused, looking around at the aliens who had initially viewed him as nothing more than an elderly prisoner. But remember, this was never about proving human superiority. It was about proving that we deserve to be treated as equals. As they made their way through the station's corridors toward the docking bay, Nyx walked beside Jack, her curiosity evident in the question she posed. The approaching unknown fleet, she said. What is Earth's assessment of their intentions? Hostile, Jack replied without hesitation. Their approach vector, speed, and complete lack of communication suggests they're not interested in diplomatic contact. Our analysis indicates they're scouting for a larger force that will follow if the initial probe is successful. And Earth's recommendation for response? Unified defense, Jack said simply. The Alliance has the military strength to repel this threat, but only if all member species work together. Earth may not have the largest fleet or the most advanced weapons, but we have something else that might be valuable. Which is? Jack stopped walking and turned to face the Lyrithi officer. Experience fighting enemies who underestimate us. We've been doing it our entire history. The docking bay was a hive of activity as Alliance personnel prepared for Jack's departure. The Earth vessel that would transport him to Union Central was a sleek, efficient design that spoke to humanity's practical approach to interstellar travel. Not as impressive as Alliance heavy cruisers, perhaps, but elegant in its simplicity. Captain Williams was waiting at the airlock, her bearing respectful but confident. She saluted Jack as he approached, a gesture that was returned with equal precision. Dr. Morgan, welcome aboard. I trust your stay was educational. Quite educational, Captain, and I believe our hosts learned a few things as well. As Jack prepared to board the transport, Zorax approached one final time. Doctor, when you meet with Supreme Counselor Thax, what will you tell him about this encounter? Jack considered the question carefully. I'll tell him that the Alliance has an opportunity to gain a valuable partner if it's willing to reconsider some long-held assumptions. I'll tell him that humanity is ready to take its place as a full member of the galactic community, with all the responsibilities and privileges that entails. And if he refuses? Jack's smile was enigmatic. Then he'll discover that apex predators are very good at waiting for better opportunities. With that, the elderly human boarded the transport vessel, leaving behind a group of aliens who would never again view humanity in quite the same way. As the ship departed the station and set course for Union Central, the Earth fleet that had maintained its silent vigil slowly dispersed, their mission complete. In the station's command center, Zorax stood watching the departing vessels on his tactical display. Nix approached with a datapad full of preliminary analysis from the day's events. "Commander, my assessment is complete. The human operation was flawless in its execution and remarkable in its restraint. They demonstrated the ability to completely neutralize our defenses while maintaining strict adherence to their stated principles of avoiding harm to Alliance personnel. Your recommendation? That we take their warning about the approaching fleet very seriously, and that we begin immediate preparation for formal diplomatic relations with Earth. They've proven themselves worthy of respect." Zorax nodded slowly, his crest rising and falling as he processed the full implications of the day's events. "Send a priority message to all Alliance commanders in this sector. Alert them about the approaching unknowns, and recommend increased readiness. And Nix. Sir, include a note that the intelligence came from human sources. It's time the Alliance learned to appreciate the value of unexpected allies." As the station returned to normal operations, the story of the elderly human who had outwitted the Alliance was already beginning to spread through unofficial channels. Within days, it would reach every corner of Alliance space, carrying with it a new understanding of what humanity represented. At Union Central, Supreme Counselor Thax was preparing for what might be the most important diplomatic meeting in Alliance history. The approaching unknown fleet represented a threat that could unite former enemies in common cause, but only if old prejudices could be set aside in favor of practical cooperation. Dr. Jackson Morgan, formerly a prisoner dismissed as insignificant, was about to become the architect of humanity's entry into galactic civilization, not through conquest or submission, but through the demonstration of qualities that true apex predators had always possessed: patience, intelligence, and the wisdom to know when strength was best shown through restraint rather than violence. The old man had been right about one thing above all others. Humanity was indeed composed of apex predators, but not because they were the strongest or the fastest. They were apex predators because they understood that survival often depended not on the ability to destroy one's enemies, but on the ability to turn those enemies into allies. And in the vast darkness of space, where unknown threats move towards civilized worlds with malevolent intent, that particular skill might prove to be the most valuable asset in the galaxy.